and then Andrew, as we've started recording. Thank you very much. So just to introduce Katharine Davidson-Brown, who happens to be my manager at Durham University. So hi, Katharine. And she's going to be talking about working wiser using the Eisenhower matrix to evaluate library services. And then we'll take questions for both speakers at the end of this paper. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. You should be able to see a title slide with a picture of a glass-fronted building. And as no one has told me they can't see the slides, we're just going to go with it. So I'm going to talk to you today about an ongoing piece of work that we're doing within the library customer services team at Durham University Library and Collections. So it's something that's changed and grown and morphed over time, not only since we started it, but since I wrote the presentation submission and actually since I wrote the slides. So you'll just have to stay with me with this. Because of this, obviously, it's very much a work in progress. So I thought what we're going to do is just go through the story of our journey so far and what we've learned along the way. So a little bit of context. So Durham University has 3 terms per year. So when I talk about terms, this is what I'm on about. So we've got the Michaelmas term, which is October to December. We've got Epiphany term, which is January to March. And we've got Easter term, which is April to June. So our story starts basically in the first term of the 2024-25 academic year. And at that point, we were running our services, carrying 0.7 FTE information assistant vacancy, which was going through approval to be replaced. We had a member of the team, another 0.7 FTE on long-term sickness absence, and we had no return date for that. And we also had a full-time information assistant colleague who was working their notice period. So we were used to, as well lots of people within customer services teams, we were used to carrying vacancies and delivering services at the same time. Generally, we've got a lot of turnover within some of the roles within our team. However, the timing of these vacancies and the absences, especially because they were all in one role and equated to nearly half of that team, meant that we were feeling a little bit more stretched than usual. So this prompted the Library Customer Services Coordinators team to start a project where we were going to formalise basically what they were doing on a daily basis anyway. So look at our priorities across all the services that we deliver and the tasks we undertake. So the customer services team is part of Durham University Library and Collections. That team provides all frontline, so face-to-face and virtual, customer, visitor and inquiry services across our department. It includes visitor services at our museums and visitor attractions. So Library and Collections includes our Palsgreen Library and Oriental Museum, as well as user services in our libraries and study spaces. And our team works 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, Monday to Sunday. So we're stretched along, a long period of time. And the original project was focused on the library services part of the customer services team, which is my area. So this is where I'm going to embarrass Naomi. So who are we? There's me, the Library Customer Services Manager, and I line manage the Customer Service Coordinators team. And at that time, we had 7 coordinators, and they were working a mix of full-time and part-time hours, including evenings and weekends. They were looking after 5 different job roles, which I've put in boxes at the bottom, which equated to 28 people. And also obviously delivering our services across multiple sites and cities. And what we were looking at this stage was how we could deploy our staff and resource in the event of unexpected absences, which were going to leave gaps on our task rota that weren't easy to fill. So basically, if someone rang in sick or took emergency leave, what we were going to do. So we started off with a list of tasks that were most likely to be affected by unexpected absence. And we decided basically how we were going to prioritise them. So in doing that, we thought about what the impact would be if the task wasn't undertaken. So we, as part of that as well, considering the difference in terms of the impact between a short-term period of absence or lack of being able to cover it compared to running that over a sustained period. We thought which parts of the task were a priority. So if we decided, for example, covering our physical help and information desk was our top priority, what parts of that do we actually mean? Is it everything that happens at that desk, or is it a little bit more specific? We also thought what has to be done at a particular time and what is a bit more flexible, what has to take place on site and what can be picked up remotely, and what is the advertised turnaround time for these services compared to what we're actually currently delivering? Are we exceeding that? Does that give us a little bit more of a kind of buffer? And we came up with a fairly crude numbering system where services were given a rating between 1 and 5, depending on their priority. So this is a screen grab from the document that we came up with. It was very much a working document, which is why it's in different colours. And you can see from that for our physical help and information desk, what we did was break down kind of that as a top level service. So what is the help and information desk, and specified which aspects of this service were our priority. So our covering that desk was our top priority. I think it got a 5. You got 5 if 5 was the best, so 5 points. But actually it was supporting entry and exit, helping users find their way around the building, helping them use equipment, providing support with borrowing and returning items, which were the most important aspect of this task. Any other queries, so things about accessing physical and electronic resources, we thought, well, they can be passed on to other colleagues, either in the building or working remotely. We've got our virtual inquiry service, or can be answered at a later date or later time. And by looking at it in this way, we basically increased the number of people who could cover the task. So those kind of tasks can be covered by anyone within our team rather than specific people. But yeah, this was really about urgency. So it wasn't what needed, it was about what needed to be done when, and not about saying that one person's job was more or less important than their colleagues. Then we made the decision because of that, and because we were dealing with unexpected absence rather than long-term planning, that we would keep this priorities ranking within the coordinators team rather than sharing it wider. No one else needed to access this anyway. It was just if someone rang in sick, what were we going to do? At the time that we were doing this, we fully expected the vacancies that we had to be approved for recruitment. We thought it would be fine if the person who's on long-term absence is off for a bit longer. We can look at increasing the number of hours that other people in the team worked in order to cover that. And this was very, very much a short-term solution. Then in early 2025, we found out that the vacancies we had in the team were not expected to be approved for recruitment. We had a number of fixed term roles as well that we were looking at doing, kind of offering as development opportunities on a sort of yearly basis. We found out that those weren't going to be replaced when they ended. So basically we were going to reduce the full-time equivalent within our team by nearly 4 full-time equivalents. So at that point, we changed our goal to long-term service delivery planning, and the intention was that this would be implemented at the start of the academic year. At this point, what we didn't know was that the university were about to announce a £20 million staff cost saving target over the next 2 years. So, as I said, things changed quite a lot during the course of this. So this is where the Eisenhower matrix came in. So the Eisenhower matrix is a productivity, prioritization and time management tool. It's designed to help you prioritize a list of tasks by categorizing them according to their urgency and importance. The goal of the matrix is basically to help you separate your tasks into the 4 quadrants based on their urgency importance compared to your goals, helping you organize and execute around your priorities. So the 4 quadrants are the first one is if something is urgent and important, it goes in that top left, which is green. And this was the box we used for tasks which had deadlines or consequences. So these were tasks that needed to happen all the time, or tasks that might come up unexpectedly but needed doing right away and couldn't wait. The orange box is the not urgent but still important box. So this was tasks where they were kind of unclear, non-specific deadlines, but they contributed to long-term success, so we still needed to do them at some point. These were tasks, I'll say, that could be scheduled for later. They might have had longer expected delivery times, or they could wait if needed, but they definitely couldn't wait forevermore. The blue box is the items that are urgent but not important. So in this box, we put tasks where They needed to be done, but they're not vital to our goals. So these were things that we might be able to delegate, or if we can't delegate them, we're not going to spend too much time and energy on them. And then the last box, the red box, are tasks that aren't urgent and aren't important. So in theory, these were the things we were most likely to be able to stop altogether. So they weren't necessary for our goals and were distractions and time wasters. So at this point with the Eisenhower matrix, we were looking at all of our services and tasks, not just the ones most likely to be affected by unexpected absence. We were in our long-term planning phase. So the first thing we had to do was to remember, what is it that we actually do? And it turned out to be a very long list. Also a very kind of broad list as well. All the tasks could be broken down into their component parts, but what we wanted to do, instead of getting kind of bogged down in the minutiae of it, was to use the kind of top level tasks to give us a starting point that would help us understand where we should direct our focus. And this is what we did. So over the course of a couple of our regular coordinator meetings, we locked ourselves in a meeting room. We had flip chart paper, felt tip pens and post-it notes. And we wrote each task or service on a post-it note, and we went through each one, considering whether the task aligned with our long-term goals or our immediate targets. So if it did, it was important. And whether it's something that we needed to address immediately due to its time sensitivity or possible consequences of delay, and then in that case it was urgent, and then we assigned it to a quadrant. It was really important to remind ourselves when we were doing this that what's urgent or important to someone else might not be the same as it was for us. So both from a personal perspective, so the coordinators within that team have their own areas of responsibility, but also as a team perspective with the customer services team within the library and collections team. So we've got collections, faculty support, archives and special collections as well within our department. So we needed to make sure that we were categorising tasks based on our team, the customer services team, priorities and goals. So in order to do that, we made sure we referred to the department strategy objectives, and we also considered the impact of each service and task on our users as well. So made sure it was very much user-centred. And I say this is what we ended up with. There were definitely tasks that we didn't agree on. There were things that moved around a few times. You can see there's quite a lot on the line between urgent and not urgent. So there were things that we couldn't quite decide how important or urgent it was. So we kind of shoved them in the middle. But it was very much, that was the beauty of doing this on post-it notes and just being able to physically pick things up and move them around, that we had that ability to do that. So having categorised the tasks, we then needed to decide what we were going to do with this information. So we'd use the Eisenhower matrix to identify the important and urgent tasks. We'd also gathered information through our past task rotas and some team observation just to get a feel for what the staff time and resource was needed to complete the tasks and deliver the services. And our hope was that this information combined would help us decide what we wanted to continue, what to pause, and what we were going to stop doing altogether for the following academic year. So yeah, what we learned going into this piece of work, I had thought about the potential issues or problems that could come up and how I, as the manager of that team, might manage that. I was worried that the team might not be able to look at it objectively. Not to say anything about the coordinators, but that they might have strong reactions to services that were within their own areas of responsibility. What they would feel like if these were being critiqued and categorised, whether they would feel like slighted or become defensive, or that there might be some really strong differences of opinion within the team. And actually, it turned out that these weren't issues at all. The team worked really well together. They were really open to positive disruption from each other, those kind of awkward questions. And they all looked at the services from a user-centred perspective and used that as their guide. So that was brilliant. And the problems that came up were actually to do with data and time. So in terms of data, it was lack of KPIs, key performance indicators in different areas. So we also had we had nothing really written down about how long things were expected to take, and we didn't have a lot of recent data about how long things actually took to deliver. And then time as well. So time to do the work, opportunities for the full coordinators team to get together. So because of their shift patterns, there isn't actually a day that everyone works, so that was a bit awkward, as well as the timing of the work. So we were trying to be our future friends, but we didn't really know where the best place to concentrate our efforts was. As I said before, we started this before the university announced that savings target. We had a £10 million savings target for professional services staff within the 2024-25 academic year. So we were working on this while waiting to see like what was going to happen as a result of that. Were there going to be any further reductions in our staff and resource because of people taking voluntary severance? So that's kind of where we are at the moment. What we're going to do next is by kind of comparing the relative worth of our services based on their relationship to our team values. That work with the Eisenhower matrix gave us that focus and direction on what areas to concentrate on. So the next thing we're going to do is use that information, use the understanding of what our staff and resource will be next year, and look at ways to improve, streamline, empower and enhance our team and our services. And the university, Durham University, call this the Wiser Initiative, which has a focus on solutions and ideas. It's there as a means to support teams and departments to identify and implement strategies which will enhance team efficiency, simplify processes and reduce unnecessary complexity and duplication. And there's a lot of resources on our kind of internal SharePoint pages around this. And what we want to do is use this framework to enable the wider customer services team to kind of take ownership of their areas and the development of those areas and the development of services, processes, and ultimately just overall kind of reduce stress, inefficiency and waste. So the whole process has really made us think about the tasks that we have to complete in order to deliver services, and also how those processes have changed over time. Usually it's out of necessity, but not necessarily thinking about the bigger picture. It's really highlighted as we've kind of looked at things really closely, how easy it is to not make time for regular reviews of processes, and to not ask ourselves, are we doing things in the best way? So a lot of times we're so busy, we're making changes to make it work kind of at that moment. And for this, I think the impulse is kind of to want to fix everything straight away, to over the summer make sure we've got everything ready as we exactly want it to be perfect for the 2025-26 academic year. But it just isn't possible. But hopefully this is where we see the fruits of our labour with that, with the Eisenhower matrix, that we know what's important, we know what's urgent. And actually at the end of May, we also knew where the reduction of our staff and resource was going to be. So we knew which areas we were going to look at first. And the hope is that if we concentrate on those initially, we aim for small wins, which on their own might not seem that significant, but collectively can have a really big impact, that we can then move on to other areas that we might want to look at. As I say, we'll also be involved in the wider library customer services team, and that's really important for us, and for me, I guess, for recognising that no one understands their role or team better than they do. They are the ones doing this work, and they will bring so many valuable insights and solutions that like myself or the coordinators just might not think about. It might not have occurred to us. So at the moment, we don't know what our services are going to look like in the next academic year. And actually, to the credit of the wider team, one of the niggles we're facing at the moment is a team who really want to continue to offer the same level of service to our students that they always have. And they're so passionate about delivering good services, which is brilliant to see, and I'm so proud of that as a manager. But unfortunately, we just don't have the resources to do that. And so as well as the changes we've got to services, how we're going to do tasks differently and processes, what we need to do is kind of support that change in mindset to understand and allow people to kind of be comfortable with that it's okay for things to take a bit longer. It's all right, and it's actually better for us to do fewer things really well than lots of things really poorly, and kind of to end on that good enough is good enough. We shouldn't be spending loads of time and effort to make something ever so slightly better or perfect. That we need to look at things from our user perspective, and if it's good enough for them, then it should be good enough for us. And that is everything I had to say. I have no idea, Naomi, if I'm super quick or not.
Yeah. Right, so yeah, I was just about to tell you you've got 5 minutes left.
Oh, there we are, 5 minutes
So
left.
we've got 5 extra minutes for questions for both of our speakers. So I think we'll stop the recording